Christ Our Cornerstone Church in O'Neill, Nebraska. I'm Pastor Logan, and it's our prayer that this message strengthens your faith and draws you closer to Christ. Let's dive in.
Cool. Well, with that being said, let's go ahead and dive in if nobody's got any questions. Today, the title of my sermon is, Who Are You? Because you're going to see, oh, Noah, your Bible, son. You left it up here. So go ahead and open to Jonah. While you're opening to Jonah, we're going to see in the text that where we're at. So we left off where Jonah is asleep in the boat, and there's more that we're going to unpack with that, by the way. There's a reason why Jonah goes into the ship, but he's now been awakened, right? And we talked about last week, if you weren't here, how the chaos of the storm, typically we are the ones that do it to ourselves, right? Like usually, now life just happens because we live in a fallen world, right? But typically when we find ourselves in a chaotic mess, it's usually because of decisions we've made, right? And so I talked about but when you make those decisions, you are typically impacting not just yourself, but those in your boat, those that are around you. It's not just yourself. I mean, how many times have I heard secular people say, the decisions I make are me. Like if I'm hurting myself, it's not hurting anybody else, so what does it matter? No, you're hurting the people around you too, because there are people that care about you, right? Or if you're a parent, the decisions that you make affect your children and your spouse, if you have one, right? And so we unpacked that. And so now we left off where we're going to dive into, there's some questions that begin to get asked. But let me ask you like this. When you first meet somebody, all right, as an adult, typically, because as kids, you just find out like, oh man, you like Nintendo? I like Nintendo, right? But as an adult, when you meet somebody, what are the first things you do? What's the first things? Let's do it like this. Sue, you and I are meeting for the first time, okay? Hey, I'm Logan. You are?
Sue.
Sue, nice to meet you. What typically, if we're just exchanging just pleasantries, and maybe we're at Easter lunch like we were before at over with Mary Lynn and Scott, what typically are some conversational things that you're going to ask and I'm going to ask?
Where you live?
Yep, good.
What you do?
What you do, good. Anything else? Those are kind of the primary things, right?
Yeah, it depends on those answers.
Yeah, and then more stuff kind of comes out of that, right? So typically we're going to ask the question, where are you from? What do you do? What do those things revolve around?
Finding out about you.
Right, but what does it begin to tell us about the person? Like if I'm asking the question, Sue, hey, where are you from? What do you do? What am I ultimately doing in my own mind?
You want to know more about them, you're interested.
Right, but I'm also, you about to say something, babe?
I was going to say you're trying to kind of identify them,
Yes, I'm trying to place them into a category, right? I'm trying to, and the word that my wife just used, identify, I'm trying to identify them, right? It becomes our identity. The first time I ever met Anita, do you want to know how she introduced herself? Do you know how you introduced yourself? She's terrified now. The crazy cow lady. And the first couple times she texted me was, hey, this is the crazy cow lady. And so I know her as the crazy cow lady. That's how she sees herself. That's how I see her, right? And so, when as I was getting to know Matt and he made fun of my makeshift 12-year-old mustache and beard, he said he's had a beard since he was 5. I now know him as the hairy bear man, right? So, yesterday or last week I saw him back there and I could see the hair from his back and I was like, man, that's got to be awful to deal with. And I wanted to ask Keely, but I wanted to be like, hey, what's it like to snuggle with a literal bear? But I didn't. Anyway, getting off track. So So we ask questions, right? Where we're going to see now in our text, this is where the sailors go, specifically the captain. So let's dive in. So we're going to be starting in verse 7. We left off at verse 6. Verse 7, come on. The sailors said to each other, let's cast lots, then we'll know who is to blame for this trouble we're in. So they cast lots, and the lot singled out Jonah. Then they said to him, tell us who is to blame for this trouble we're in. What is your business? Where are you from? What is your country? And what people are you from? Do you see those questions? What are they trying to figure out in this moment? If they're casting lots, so to cast lots, if you don't know, it's kind of like drawing straws, but doing it like kind of with dice, if you will. And so they would always do this, by the way. And God, you see the disciples actually do this in the book of Acts. And so God would permit it at times when they were trying to figure out what it is they were supposed to do, the will of God. And so what I find really interesting, though, is that even atheist Roman leaders would cast lots, even though it was illegal, by the way, not to be an atheist in those times because they had so many gods. But there are certain philosophers who were atheists, and they discussed how they would cast lots to figure out what it is they were to do. And so this is a very common practice where they're going, all right, well, I don't know what we're supposed to do, so we're going to do this. We're going to draw straws. And so they're saying, whose fault is it that this is happening? This obviously has to be somebody's sin. And so they believed, these sailors, they believe in multiple gods, but they specifically believe in a god of the sea. And so they're casting lots, trying to figure out whose fault is it, and it lands on Jonah. So then they're like, oh, so you're the troublemaker. So who are you? What do you do? Where are you from? Okay. Then what does Jonah say? So he says in verse 9, and he answered them, I am a Hebrew. That's important that you notice that, by the way. Briefly, why didn't he say, I'm from Israel, or I'm Israeli, or I'm an Israelite? Any ideas? Why does he say he's a Hebrew instead of I'm an Israelite? Well, first off, because to other nations, they weren't Israelites, they were Hebrew people. They didn't know them as, it was only within the Israelite nation that Israelites considered themselves Israelites, because it comes from the name, whose name got changed to Israel? Jacob. So to other surrounding nations, that's why he wouldn't say, I am an Israelite. And again, the reason why I'm pointing this out is because it's important. And so he says, I'm Hebrew. I worship the Lord, the God of heavens, who made the sea and dry land. All right? Then the men were seized by great fear and said to him, what is this you've done? And the men knew that he was fleeing the Lord's presence because he told them. So tell me, what do you see in the text? Like, what just pops off, by the way? Like, immediately, if we're looking at identity, okay, that's what we're talking about. If we're talking about identity and we're answering these questions that he's answering, what do you notice about the way that Jonah responds?
He identifies his God.
Okay, good. He identifies his God. What else? How does he identify his God, by the way, Doug?
Telling what his accomplishments are.
Yeah.
Made the land.
Yeah, he is the God, right? What else?
He's the creator.
What's that?
He's the creator.
Uh-huh. What about the order with which he says his answers?
He's worshiping God. That's his Lord. He's his God.
Right. But how does he answer first? What's the first thing that comes out of his mouth? says he's a Hebrew, right? Then he says, I worship the Lord. Is he not a prophet? You may be like, well, I don't understand where you're going with this. His national identity mattered more to him than who he got his identity from. That's important that you see that. So when we look at the fact that, yes, he is a prophet, he literally is a mouthpiece for God. He sees it as a job, not a calling. And that's secondary to his identity, because what is first to his identity to him is his ethnicity and his nationality. I'm going to go ahead and say something that is very, very controversial. It is not, it's not beating around the bush. So we have an entire culture problem with you see yourself by your race or by your family lineage or your heritage before you see yourself with anything else. That's a problem. That's a problem. And it doesn't matter what race or nationality you are, white, black, Hispanic, Indian, it doesn't matter. If that is the first and foremost thing of your makeup and you call yourself a Christian, you are just like Jonah in this moment. You're made in the image of God. You are an image bearer, so it's important that you understand that first and foremost in your identity, it's Him. Okay? This is so much of the problem in our culture is because we don't see ourselves as image bearers, or we don't have Him first in our identity. And I'm going to go back and say something too. There are a lot of pastors who have the role of pastor and see themselves as pastors before they see themselves as sons of the living God. They see it as a job. They don't see it as a call. And now you see why there's a lot of dead churches, right? So, all right, let's get going, diving in. First, the first point that I have is purpose. So the first thing they ask is, what are you doing here? Okay? And they're asking, what is your purpose? What's the reason you're here? Why are you in this boat right now? And so why is he in the boat? He's running from God, right? Running from his mission. He has a mission, and he's running from it. And so here's what I want you all to know. And you need to write this down because this is important. This is a lot of the reasons why we as Christian families are so, we play defense instead of offense. And here's why I say that. God gives each of us a mission, a reason for being that is tied to our gifts, responsibilities, and opportunities. Avoiding it limits our impact and robs us of fulfillment. Do you hear that? Did you hear what I said? All of us have a mission. It's not just Pastor Logan. It's not just because Pastor Logan is a pastor or missionaries or whatever. All of us have a purpose and a mission that God has given us. Every single one. My wife has a crucial mission. She homeschools. She helps raise up our kids. And she would tell you that she also had to, unfortunately, turn me into a godly man, because before that I was just a little boy who had no idea what it was to be a godly man. And so, but she has a mission that is crucial, because as you guys have heard me say before, when the Psalms talk about that blessed is the man whose quiver is full of arrows, talking about children, what do arrows do? They hit their mark, right? And so if you are a godly parent in this room and grandparent, you should see your children as arrows going to pierce darkness. Are you raising them up in a purposeful way? That is part of your mission. What is your gift sets? What are the things that God has given you? What has God placed around you? What are the opportunities? All of these things are a part of your mission. Scott, in the military, would the military be kind of aimless and useless if we didn't have a mission and we were all just kind of like making it up as we went along? We wouldn't be a very good military, right? And so, but yet there's a lot of families, a lot of Christians who are like an aimless military. You're just kind of existing. You're fighting fights that don't need to be fought. God doesn't need you to do that. He needs you over here engaged in a spiritual battle. And instead, we're too busy arguing on Facebook about how many colors were in the coat of many colors. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense? So I want you to imagine the parable of the talents, where servants were entrusted with different amounts of gold. The servant who buried his talent missed out on a chance to grow, while the others invested wisely and multiplied what they were given. Our purpose is to recognize the gifts God has bestowed upon us, not hide them in fear, but to actively use them for His glory. When we embrace our God-given mission, we step into a life rich with potential, just like those servants who sought to multiply their master's wealth. So my question to you right now is, what is your mission? Husbands and wives, you should be getting together, praying through, going, all right, we're in specific phases, we're in different phases of life. The phase that Christy and Derek are in a lot different phase than Tracy and I are in. And the phase that Tracy and I are in life is a lot different phase than what Trudy and Jean are in, right? All of us are in different phases of life. The problem is when we get to a different phase of life, we start to relax a little bit more. And senior adults in this room, I love you, but many times you guys are thinking with a westernized mindset that says it's about retirement age. And you start kind of like tapering back on things, and you're not too active. And then you start saying things like, well, I can't be engaged with youth and helping in youth ministry or children's ministry or doing this or that because, well, they don't want to hear from me, or, it's time for me just to enjoy my life. I've worked no. You don't see retirement in the scriptures anywhere. You don't. Okay? So what does it look like then? Well, the Levites, the priests, they would, as they got older, they had younger priests coming in. What did they do? They sowed into them and they made way for them and they continued on. And so here's what I'm saying. You should each, no matter your age, no matter if you're married or single, no matter if you've got kids or grandkids, all of you should be gathered and trying to figure out and pray through what is the mission God has called us to in this moment. Right now, where we are, what does that look like? What is our mission? The mission we have as a family right now is to, one, homeschool each one of our kids, raise them up, get them ready for life to go pierce darkness. Our mission is to help love this church and disciple and send out. And then to love our neighbors that are around us and those who God has placed within our influence. That is our family mission right now. Will it change? Absolutely, it'll change. As my kids begin to go out, they get married, have grandkids, Tracy and I will then pivot. All right, God, what is it that you want from us now? Does that you guys following? I want you to hear this, and I think I have a slide for it. It's a quote from John Calvin. Is it on there? I hope so. Okay, cool. You should write this down. John Calvin, French reformer. All who are ignorant of the purpose for which they live are fools and madmen. Dude, that is a punch in the face. John Calvin saying, if you are ignorant of your purpose and mission, then you are nothing more than a fool. So here, just as Jonah was called to Nineveh, God has a mission for each of us. As I've said, this isn't only for pastors. It's for every person in our workplaces, homes, and communities. Purpose gives us direction and meaning to life. To give you an idea, this is part of an identity issue in myself. Too many times I have, because we as men, by the way, we put our identity in what we do. Women tend to put their identity in parenting, in taking care of the home. We have, and that's because those things are innately put into us. You see that in the creation narrative. God created Adam to work, and he created Eve to be a helpmate and to come alongside, and they live together. One is nurturing, right? So, but we as men, we put our identity in what we do. And so when that identity is stripped from us, we tend to wander. And so there was a time when, different times in my life where I growing up, I was like, man, I'm going to be a professional baseball player and playing, and doing all these things. And then when I get hurt and that gets stripped from me, I have no idea who I am. And then I'm like, oh, I know who I am. I want to be a famous drummer and I want to be a rock star. And it's like all those things begin to happen. That gets stripped away. Then I have no idea who I am. And then it's like I put all my effort into being a pastor. God takes that away from me for a season. I am depressed and have no idea who I am apart from pastoring. And so why? Because I feel like I'm purposeless. I feel like I have no meaning to my life. But what God had to show me is ultimately He is the purpose and meaning to my life. I have to get things right in my identity order. And then once I've got things right in order, then I can go back to my purpose and meaning. Your mission isn't just for you. It impacts your family, your friends, and community. Actively embracing your calling blesses others and multiplies your influence. As I already said about the parable of the talents, the servants were entrusted with resources that they need to steward. So I want to ask you, are you stewarding the gifts that God has given you well? Don't run from God in fear and in disobedience because you're just like, I can't do that, or I'm too old for that, or my body's too broken for that. If God's telling you to do something, you should do it. And if you're wandering through life without a mission, you're a madman. So I want you to recognize the gifts that God has given you, the spiritual gifts, the relational gifts, the practical gifts, and use them intentionally. Purpose is expressed in action, not just intention. So I want to go back. Jennifer, you said, and Trudy, you said, I really appreciate the devotions that you're doing. And multiple of you guys, like I said, have told me, and it's been very meaningful. I have noticed, and I was telling Tracy this, writing was not a natural gift that God had given to me. I have terrible grammar, but it has been an exercise and something that I've enjoyed doing. And I've noticed that the more that I do it, one, the better I get, but two, I begin to see God working through it. And so it wasn't a natural gift that was already there. It was something I had to learn to do. So my question is, we can't just have just intention of, oh, I'd like to do that. It's no, I may not be good at it. It's no, like maybe I need to work at it. Does that make sense? So when we embrace our God-given mission, we step into a full life of potential, just as the faithful servants multiplied their talents. Like Jonah, avoiding our purpose can create confusion, it can harm others, and diminish our witness. Point number 2, people. Who are you with? Who are you with? God gives us relationships and communities, but when we rely on them to define our worth, our identity, they become virtual gods. Replacing God as the source of significance, Jonah leaned on his Hebrew identity, treating it as the ultimate marker of value rather than letting his obedience to God define him. I'm going to put it to you like this. I told you when I decided I wanted to be a rock star, I put all of my effort into it. And so when I had the chance to tour, what's up, Gus? When I had the chance to tour all over the country and play, and when I began to meet people that I grew up, so just to kind of give you guys a little window into young Logan, I was so enamored with CDs and tapes and records. So I was that kid that maybe you guys don't get this, but like if I got a tape or a CD and I love records to this day because I love the tangibleness of feeling stuff. I miss being able to go and rent a movie at Blockbuster, okay? Like, I hate the fact that I love the easy use of streaming stuff, but I love the experience of art. And so when I was a kid, I would get the CDs or the tape jackets out, and I would read all the lyrics. I'd look at all the pictures, and I would look at who produced and who wrote and all these things. And so I was a nerd about those things. So whenever God began to open the doors for me to meet people of bands and stuff that I loved, getting to meet people that influenced me, getting to meet record producers that I had read their name in a CD jacket and different writers, like, it kind of puffed me up. And then you begin to, like, name drop in a conversation. Have you guys ever met name droppers? Where it's like, yeah, old blah, blah, blah. Yeah, when we were hanging out having lunch the other day, having coffee, he was asking me what I thought, and I told him what I thought. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about? You guys know those name droppers? So you begin to name drop because you start feeling very self-important. And you're like, yeah, I'm rubbing elbows. I'm touring with this person, and I'm getting to know this person, and I've got this person's number in my phone. And I actually, just random, I put in a fake phone number, and I took a picture of Tom Brady, and I put it in my phone just to tell my kids. And Micah forever thought I really had Tom Brady's phone number. So, but it really made him, in his eyes, his dad was really cool then. But when God stripped me of those things, and let me tell you, when you are no longer a musician in the Christian music industry, okay, if you no longer have a use to them, you're gone. You're no longer in the in crowd, all right? And when it was like I would comment on somebody who I had become friends with, the next thing I know, I'm deleted and I'm no longer a friend with them, and I'm like, what just happened? Like, it's like a whiplash effect, right? And then I begin to melt down. Why? Because my entire identity was based on those who were around me and what I did. And so when our identity becomes about who are you with and what are you about, and it can be your family, when those things become bigger than God, it will crumble. Family members, jobs, money, all of these things are terrible gods. They will never fulfill, they will always let you down, and they will always be slave drivers. You can never work enough. You can never do enough. Does that make sense? So everyone gets their identity. We all say to ourselves, I'm significant because of this, or I'm acceptable because of I'm welcomed by them, or because I'm hanging out with them. It could be family, a social group, it can be culture or achievement. But all of those things, if you've ever found yourself saying, I'm significant to yourself, I'm significant because of this, or I'm acceptable because of that, I'm telling you right now, that is idolatry. It's only going to break you. These are all false gods in disguise. When identity, people, or approval become our ultimate source of significance, they start to dictate our choices. We protect them at all costs, sometimes even over God's call. And I'm telling you right now, God will absolutely break you to get you to a place to see that He is the ultimate God. Jonah's example, as Jonah leaned on being a Hebrew as his claim of value, it gave him comfort, but it blinded him to God's mission and truth. His identity became a crutch and, in effect, a rival God. What do I mean by that? Why did Jonah not want to go to Nineveh? Why didn't he want to go to Nineveh?
He hated those people.
He hated them. Couldn't stand them. He saw them as evil. They were the arch rival to his own nation state. So, of course, if you put your identity in your nationality, then those other people become your rival. And your nationality is your God, not God. So, let's reflect for a second. What or who in your life have you elevated to ultimate importance? When relationships, reputation, or cultural labels control you, you're worshiping them instead of God. True freedom comes from finding identity in Christ. And so God calls us to let him define our significance, not the people around us. Only when our identity is rooted in him can we embrace purpose, obey his call, and live faithfully, regardless of cultural, familial, and social pressures. Now, before I go into the next thing, something I was thinking about when I was driving up here Wednesday was the verse, and I wish I would have written it down, but it's just popping in my head now. There's a verse in Psalms that says something along the lines of, they exchanged the glory of God for an ox. Okay? That line, they exchanged the glory of God for an ox. And I was like, exchange the glory of God. And you're like, yeah, okay, of course, like they're worshiping a false idol. But it's like, no, there's something else there. And as I began to drill down, it hit me like the Holy Spirit was like, it's right here. When he says they exchanged the glory of God, and when you read in Romans, it kind of says something similar. They exchanged, right, who they were for something false, and God gave them over to it. Who are we made in the image of? God. When you begin to put your identity into something else, that thing becomes your God, right? So you're exchanging the glory of God for that thing. Now follow me. The glory of God is infinitely valuable. Okay? When you put your identity in that thing or that person or whatever it is, that role, you devalue the glory of God. And thus, when you devalue the glory of God, you devalue yourself. Your value is then gone because you were made in his image, in which he, by the way, came and died for you. You are devaluing yourself and him by worshiping something false that cannot provide. Does that make sense? And so, what is it? What's the thing that you are putting all of your time, your energy, your money, all of you into this that has stolen the glory of God and ultimately devalued you? Next, place. Where do you come from? The places we occupy, physically, socially, and spiritually, reveal what really matters to us. Jonah tried to position himself far from the people God had called him to reach. And his choices revealed that his heritage and self-interest mattered more than God's obedience. So remember when I said, this hit me this week whenever I was preparing. When I said that Jonah went into the bowels of the boat, right? And I've always just thought, okay, well, yeah, because it says he went to sleep, he's just tired. He's trying to shut everything off. He's trying to ignore everything. And as I was preparing, I'm like, oh my Lord. No, he does that. He does that on purpose, not just to go to sleep. But who are on the boat? Who's on the boat with him? Sailors. Are sailors Israelites? Do they worship the God of heaven and earth? So that makes them pagan. Who was Jonah running from? Pagans. Jonah was so self-important to himself that he was like, oh, I can't. I'm going to get on this boat because I'm running from God and I'm only going to use you guys as a tool with which to run. But I don't even want to be near you. You're unclean. You see that? In all aspects of what Jonah is doing and what he spouts, he says he believes, because he says it, that he does believe in the God of heaven and earth, right? He says he's a Hebrew. All of these things that he espouses, he doesn't actually believe. And so he shows it. The way he occupies space, where he puts himself physically in the boat. And so we use distance as a shield, just like Jonah. Jonah physically isolates himself on the ship, trying to escape the pagan sailors and symbolically the mission that God had given him. Avoidance becomes a strategy. We all do that. We allow avoidance to become the strategy to keep us from the mission of God. Jonah is arrogant, he's self-righteous, and he's bigoted, yet completely unaware of it all. Like many of us, he's not self-reflective until confronted by external pressure, casting lots. Okay. So when I say what I'm about to say, just know Pastor Logan is preaching to himself. My wife will tell you, she's going to shake her head. I know she is in agreement. Your pastor is not very good at knowing himself. I am one of the most emotionally unintelligent people in this room, I can assure you. My wife will be like, "What's the matter with you?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" "Something's wrong." "No, I'm fine." "No, something is wrong because you're just kind of like angry a little bit and you're stressed about something." I'm like, "I'm totally fine. I'm totally good." 2 days later, after I've blown up and it's like, I go, "Oh, hey, remember when I said nothing was wrong the other day?" "Yeah, there was something wrong. I just didn't realize it." And she's like, "Yeah, I know. You just distract yourself all the time with stuff." And so there's so many people in the world, and I'm sure there are many people in this room. We are not very self-reflective to know who we are and what we're about. It's very easy to say what you're about, but do you really live out what you're about? Are you really looking inside and going, are there things, am I avoiding God? Am I avoiding a specific person? Am I avoiding my mission? Why am I upset? Because we're not very self-reflective, and it takes God getting in the way and smacking you upside the face and going, "Wake up!" And for Jonah, it was casting lots. Jonah's like, I'm going to act like. Jonah is so self-righteous and arrogant, he was willing to die and let everyone else die around him than say who he was and where he was from. And to have God tell him, "Go back." Am I wrong? I mean, and so God's like, "Okay, all right, well, I'm going to use their superstition to point you out and shine a gigantic light on you to say, you're the problem." And so there's some of you guys, and I said it last week, and I'm pointing at myself, we can be going, what's the issue? Why is my life the way that it is? What is going on? Why is it always kind of in chaos? Why is it that I'm always mad at people? And then it's like, it's got to be all the other people. Like, it's got to be my job. It's got to be my coworkers. It's got to be my neighbor. It's definitely my spouse. And then it's like, God's like, "Hey, you're the problem, bud. You're the issue." And so we need to self-reflect and go, where do I come from? What's going on? What's the place? So Jonah declares, "I'm a Hebrew. This is where I come from," before acknowledging, "I worship the God of heaven." His ethnicity, his lineage, and heritage take precedence over obedience. Race and nationality in his mind are more significant than his God-given calling. And so he has excuse over obedience. Jonah's attachment to his identity becomes an excuse to flee God's mission. His sense of place where he belongs culturally and physically is self-serving, masking his lack of conviction and deflecting responsibility. So I want to read this quote to you. I think I have it here too. This is a quote from a sermon from Charles Spurgeon. Go ahead and let this punch you in the face like it did me. "Let them get home to their knees and pray God to give them manliness enough, at least to be damned honestly, and not to go down to perdition wearing the name of Christian when Christians they are not." Do you guys get that? You guys get what he's saying? We pull a Jonah. We're Christian by name, by title only, because our actions and who we are and what we're about are completely different than what we say. And so Charles Spurgeon says, hey, let them go home and pray that they would be manly enough and honest enough to, if they're going to go down to hell, let them go down to hell understanding that they were not a Christian. And they were willing to admit that. Dude, that's a hardcore quote. And so ask yourself, do the places you occupy, the groups you cling to, or the roles you play dictate your actions more than God's calling? True faith may require moving beyond comfort, cultural norms, and personal privilege to embrace God's mission. And so just as Jonah's sense of place and heritage kept him from obedience, we too let geography, we let culture, or our social circles dictate our faithfulness. God calls us to root our place in him, not in the comforts or labels that surround us. Last one, the last P word, perception. How your choices affect your witness. Now, Dustin, if you would pull up our verse of the week, please. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse anyone who treats you with contempt. And what's that next word? It says, and all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Oof. Jonah, my brother. You missed that one, bud. Is he being a blessing to the sailors on the boat? No! They're literally about to die because of his own disobedience. Oh man, I just got water all over myself. I promise I didn't. Yeah, okay. Our obedience or disobedience doesn't just impact us. It shapes how others see God and whether we are a blessing or a curse in the lives around us. Jonah's flight endangered the sailors and misrepresented God, turning it into a stumbling block rather than a witness. By complete disobedience, he causes a storm that almost kills men. And instead of being a blessing, he is a curse to these men. So Genesis 12:3 says that they are a blessing. If God blesses them, he will bless others. And those they curse, he will curse. And Abraham and the Hebrew people were called to be a blessing to the nations. It does not say just to Israelites, did it? It said all peoples. Our faith is relational. It affects the world around us. And so instead of being a blessing, Jonah's avoidance and selfishness put the sailors in danger. His disobedience created turmoil and suffering, distorting the witness of God he claimed to serve. I'm going to give you guys a personal failure time of me where I basically lived this out. And I lived it out in a way that was very public and very personal, and it still affects us today as a family. I coached Micah in 9U travel baseball. The name of our team is the Ambassadors. We have a cross on our sleeves. We are known as a Christian team, even though not all the players or families that are on our team were Christians. And all of our coaching staff and all of our parents knew that I was a pastor. Okay? I tried very hard to not take winning, like we were bad, really bad, okay? We only won 2 games out of 30. So needless to say, I didn't get any calls to go, up to AAA or anything. we had a lot, like we're playing 9U, but we had 7-year-olds on our team. And like I got thrown into coaching because I wasn't supposed to, and just, it's a big mess. But I never took losing personally. I never cared. I wanted kids to learn the fundamentals, okay? And my dad was brutal to me growing up, just really brutal. And so I was like, I'm not gonna do that to my son. I'm never gonna be that dad. Well, we go to a tournament in Omaha, and the opposing coach, we have to come out and introduce ourselves and whatever and do all the stuff that you do beforehand, talk about the rules, all that stuff. Well, the guy was an absolute jerk, massive jerk. The only coach that I legitimately was like, after the game, if he just happens to be in a dark alley somewhere, he and I are gonna go at it. Because I wanted the kids to have fun. This was a tournament. But I was like, hey, do you mind if once you bat through your lineup, if we don't have 3 outs, that we just change? And he said, no, this is a tournament. We're not playing Little League. And I'm like, well, technically it is Little League, but whatever. And so he was just a huge jerk about it because it literally, I'm not joking, guys. There was one tournament, it took us an hour and a half to get 3 outs. An hour and a half, and it's a 2-hour game. We were bad. So I'm just like, hey man, all right, whatever. And so he was just a massive jerk. And so I'm like, so I go back to our team and I'm like, boys, I have never begged so hard for a win in my life. But that dude over there needs to be kicked in the teeth, fellas. So this is what we're gonna do. Well, I wanted to win so bad. Here's my son. By the way, and I'm not saying this because he's my son, but he was the best player on our team. And so, but I never tried to put any pressure on him. Well, he gets a hit, he's running, he gets to second base. Great, we got a double, we got a run in, we're on the board, all right? Well then, there's a pop-up, and if anybody's ever played baseball, when there's less than 2 outs and there's a pop-up, you do not run, all right? My son knows this. What does he do? He runs, because in his mind, he's like, Dad wants to win. I'm scoring, baby. He takes off. They catch the ball. They tag him out. 3 outs. I come unglued. Brothers and sisters, I come unglued. I run out onto the field. I grab him by the arm. I'm like, what is the matter with you? There's less than 2 outs. Are you kidding me? You know better than that. He looks at me. And he never cries, ever. And he just crumbles. And we've got fans from both opposing teams, and everybody knows that I'm a pastor. And I'm like, and here we got the cross on our jerseys. And I am livid. And he goes back and I said, don't you cry, suck it up, get the catcher's gear on and get out there. Dude, Daddy woke up Mama Bear. She comes storming into that dugout. Listen, Pastor, who do you think you are? That's my son. And a reminder, that's your son. We're going home. And I said, it's only the first inning. She says, I don't care. You need to get your crap together, sir. She snatches Micah up. She gets, and all the rest of my kids, all right? This was the look I got. I'm standing in the dugout. As they make their way to the vehicle, these are all the rest of my kids. And in that moment, I'm like, oh my gosh. This has been 2 years ago, people. I have not lived this down. I have apologized to my son. I apologized to the team. I apologized to the parents. Still wanted to kick that dude across the face that was over on the other side. But I felt about that big as I drove home by myself in the car from Omaha back to Lincoln. And I'm like, and still to this day, go up to Micah and be like, who's the worst coach you've ever had? He'll go, there's only really one. I've had some bad ones, but there's one that tops the list. And I share that story because of this. We wear the cross. Everybody knows me as a pastor. We're the ambassadors of the gospel. And here I am acting a fool on a 9-year-old game that I couldn't even tell you who won that tournament. Couldn't tell you. We won 2 games the entire year. Did that one game really matter? Nope. But what is forever cemented in my kid's mind? How I acted a fool and not like his dad. And so Jonah is acting a fool, and I'm asking you, when have you acted a fool? Many of us fail to be a blessing in our spheres. Instead of a blessing to my son, I was absolutely a failure to him. Our family, our work, our neighborhoods, through selfishness, negativity, or avoidance of responsibility, our attitude, our words, and our choices can either point others to God or push them away. Are your actions encouraging? Are they uplifting? Are they pointing to God, or are they creating friction and confusion? Our lives are a living testimony. Being faithful in small daily obedience blesses others and honors God. Anybody can write a $1,000 check and want or a $1,000 tip to a waitress and feel good for a moment. But it takes a lot of just dying to self to be faithful every single day in just small little obediences. One momentary lapse of fallenness can ruin your entire testimony. Our perception is built not on titles or intentions, but on what others experience through us. Jonah's story warns us that failing to live rightly, even in small ways, can misrepresent God and hinder his work through us. True faith flows outward as a blessing, not friction. Men in the room, I'm going to say this. If you did not get a book from me, I will order more if you would like one. But I passed out a book. Where can I borrow? So I passed out a book, and I'm going to get more. But I passed out this book to the men in the room, How to Exasperate Your Wife. And this book, I just absolutely loved. And one of the things that it says in there, because you're not supposed to exasperate your wife, that's why it's a funny take. But there's a title of one of the chapters on how to exasperate your wife. And one of the things that Doug Wilson says in it is, make sure to comment on her body daily and tell her how she doesn't add up to the other women in your life. Comment on her cooking and how your mom's was better. Single guys in the room, don't do those things. If you want to go on living or to procreate, you will not do those things. But the reason why I'm bringing this up and what we just talked about, husbands, you are crucial to the spiritual lifeblood of your family. How you treat your wife, how you treat your kids will ultimately either make much of Jesus or it will diminish him. It will rob him of his glory by the way that you talk to her, the way that you love her. After I read that book, I called Tracy on the phone and I said, I'm sorry. She goes, for what? I said, because one of the things he talks about in there is God, though God has placed you as the spiritual head of your home, you are responsible, okay? But God has given your wife, the ladies in this room, the dominion and authority in your home. Not that she is placed over you. She is to be the homemaker, and you are to come alongside and help. And if mama says, take your shoes off at the door, take your shoes off at the door. Because if you don't, the sons and the daughters that you have that are walking behind, they won't either. And here's what I had to apologize for. He says, when she makes a meal and it's not something you really want or it's leftovers, you weren't the one that made it. She was. So you say thank you, and you eat it with a smile on your face and be thankful that she made it for you. And it's not poisoned. That would be the other part. And so I'm handing that out because men in this room, what we say about what we believe and who we are, we can either be disobedient Jonahs who see ourselves as self-important and arrogant, or we can see ourselves as servants of Christ who love our spouse, who love our kids, and die daily to ourselves. Because if we live that way, I promise you, the world would be a lot better place. Let's pray.